Pete Wishart to move the motion.
Mr. Turner, and it's a pleasure to serve under your chairing once again. I didn't have to say I didn't know I was so popular today, and I'm delighted to see so many colleagues joining us in this short debate. And can I warmly welcome the Minister to his new role. We were, I have to say, shocked and appalled at his unjustified defenestration at the Scotland office, and we were energetic supporters of the Get Ian a Job, Any Job campaign. So we're delighted to see him here in his place, in his rightful place today. It has to be asked, though, who has he upset in the last few weeks to be landed with this particular poison chalice? But here we go again, Mr Turner. It's taken 20 years, but ID cards are back. This time in a shiny new digital format, turbocharged by modern technology and all the new modern features and technology. Tony Blair, of course, famously tried to introduce ID cards back in the 2000s before being forced to abandon them by a fantastic campaign of civil liberty campaigners, of members in this House, and of course the millions and millions of ordinary UK citizens who simply refused to have ID cards foisted upon them. But they're back. Like the spectre from the political grave, ID cards are with us once again. And it's just not possible that Tony Blair might just reach his ultimate aim, objective, aspiration of getting ID cards back, only this time in the form of his proxy, the current Prime Minister. Now, I had the misfortune of being around back in the 2000s with the honourable gentleman behind me, and we were part of the campaign that defeated Tony Blair at that point, and we're looking forward to defeating them again. But all the debate and all this tone of this seems to be eerily familiar. Once again, we have a government earnestly assuring us that this is a benign, benevolent scheme designed purely to make life easier for the general public. They talk about, like, Tesco club cards, about never having to find your utility bills ever again, like it's nothing more than a boarding pass. It's a sort of, don't you worry your silly little heads about this mass data collection or our newfound ability to monitor your every move. We're the UK government. Of course you can trust us. Well, Mr Turner, we've heard it all before, and we know that this campaign is only going to be ramped up because the concerns remain the same. The threats to our privacy and civil liberties, the risk of mass surveillance, the dangers of government overreach, and the only two real vulnerabilities that come with storing vast quantities of personal data. And we only have to look at the newspaper headlines this morning to see the true effects of that particular fear with the breakdown in Amazon workplaces. Imagine if that was the personal data of everybody across the United Kingdom. I'll go away briefly. Yeah.
Thank you, Wayne. I thank him for bringing this debate, because it is an issue that I think the general public is engaging in. But he will know that Scotland has its own identity card, known as the Scot card, which is used to store benefit data, debt data, the checks to make sure people can work with vulnerable people, court data, tax data. Quite incredible. And there's real fears that this...
Interventions need to be very short.
So I'll get to okay. I thank you for it again. So does he share the concern of Big Brother Watch that this is a mandatory ID system in Scotland in all but name? And does he share the concern of my residents that the data could be leaked?
Thank you. I'm not going to waste time responding to all the nonsense you said. It is a voluntary scheme. Now, does the honourable member know the difference between voluntary and mandatory? All he needs to either do is shake his head or nod it, because that is exactly the detail is at hand. This has been objected to because it is mandatory. It's one of the few mandatory ID systems anywhere in the world. The Scottish account's great, but it's up to the individual user what gets put into it and what gets shared. Unlike this horror, I'm not giving away term again. And this time, Mr Turner, this scheme could barely have got off to a worse start. Support for digital ID has actually collapsed since the public have been able to see the government's proposals. The petition calling it for it to be scrapped has become one of the fastest growing ever we've seen. It's now almost at 3 million, and I'm pretty certain by the time I sit down, it will be well over 3 million signatories. And I saw the Minister, I heard the Minister on his car crash interview on Radio Scotland, where he both simultaneously at the same time told us the government plans were both compulsory and voluntary. He went on to say apparently it would be mandatory for some purposes, a sort of partial compulsion, if you like, a digital half-pregnancy. Maybe this is a Schrodinger's brick card. Yes, we're going to wait.
Thank you, Mr Chair, and thank the honourable member for giving way. Would the member agree with me that the vast majority of the population across the UK, including Northern Ireland, are clearly seeing what this is? It's a breach of their data, it's a breach of spying on them, and that the mass population are now opposed to this?
Yeah, absolutely. And support for this, as I've said, has been plummeted right across the United Kingdom. I'm not surprised that's the case in the United Kingdom. So let's just dispel with this notion. This is a mandatory scheme. It is compulsory. It's to be compulsory for work, and if it's compulsory for work, it's going to be mandatory, full stop. The only people who won't need one of these brick cards are people who plan never to work, never plan to rent a home or have access to public services, and never take part in any part of normal life. Now, as we know, all of this emerged from our friends in Labour Together. It was them that first proposed this, and it has been adopted by the Labour Party. And for some reason, they thought they would call this the brick card, almost immediately alienating most of Scotland and probably about half of Northern Ireland at the same time. And it's given the recent controversies with Labour Together, it's probably a good idea for the Minister and his government team to stay as far away and as distant as they possibly can from Labour Together. But, Mr Turner, let's have a proper look under the bonnet of the great British Brit card. The government says that it will be free of charge this time around and available to all citizens and legal residents, which I think is so far so good. But we still don't know its reach. Who will be expected to adopt one and take one? There's already been rumours that 13-year-olds might have to have a Brit card, though that has been disputed by the government. And we already know, of course, that our veterans will be the first of the many digital guinea pigs.
On that point?
Yes, of course.
As a veteran, I looked yesterday and I was quite disgusted to see that the veterans are being used as guinea pigs with a smokescreen to actually test this system. Our veterans do everything for us. They're brave people. They should not be the ones that are tested on this. Does the member agree with me?
The honourable member most definitely does agree with the honourable gentleman, and it's absolutely absurd and so unfair that it's our veterans that are the guinea pigs in order to test this out for this government. But essentially, Mr Turner, we're told that this is essential to tackle illegal working and illegal migration. But when you actually look at the evidence of mandatory ID right across the world, it just does not stack up. Under the government's plan, anyone seeking work must prove their right to work through this digital ID, giving the Home Office sweeping new powers over individuals' daily lives, from employment to housing to basic public services. Yet everywhere where we see the mandatory ID is in place, there's no clear evidence whatsoever that they reduce illegal working or irregular migration. Let's be absolutely clear. Illegal working doesn't stop because people are forced to carry digital ID cards. It stops when people are allowed to work legally, contribute to society and live without fear. Now, Big Brother Watch has called mandatory digital ID a civil liberties nightmare, and they are absolutely right. Amnesty International warns that such a scheme risks becoming a honeypot for hackers and a tool for state surveillance. Again, absolutely right. It's also been the case, Mr Turner, that the UK has never been the sort of nation where it's been normal to have to prove who you are when you've not been suspected of doing anything wrong. Now, I don't share the concept of being British, but there's something particularly un-British about having to surrender huge amounts of personal data just to access basic services. To be part of a papers, please culture even in digital form, just seems to be so alien to this country that we still... I will give way to the honourable gentleman.
Thanks. I agree with most of his conclusions here. Does he agree with me that actually, in hindsight, the use of a COVID passport by the Scottish Government was a mistake, and especially in the way it exposed the Government to criticism from the Information Commissioner about the lack of transparency of how that data was used?
Because he needs an answer to that. No, I don't think it was a mistake to have that in place. I think it was absolutely the correct thing to do. But mandatory digital ID would fundamentally change the trust-based relationship between citizen and state, replacing it with one of constant verification and oversight. And let's not forget about the danger of mission creep. Once this type of infrastructure exists, it very rarely stays confined to its original purpose. The government says that the police won't be able to demand to see a person's digital ID, but can anyone seriously believe that that won't change over time? And this just isn't about what this government might do. It's about what every future government might do too. We're not just empowering this Labour government, we're empowering every government that will come after it. Can you just imagine the sight of Prime Minister Farage with the data of the nation at his fingertips with all of his authoritarian tendencies? It scares me half to death, and it should scare the whole of the House half to death. Then there's the cost. The government have been very coy about the costs, reluctant to even give us any sort of ballpark figure, and they're absolutely right to do so too. Now, those that have been prepared to work out an estimate on their behalf have said initially this could cost anything between 1.2 billion to 2 billion, a gross underestimate at what that would cost. Our friends in Labour Together, of course, laughingly told us that this would be £1.4 million. But we only need to look at the costs of the physical ID to get some sort of sense about what it will eventually cost. They were to cost £5.4 billion for the physical ID. Some people reckon that that would get above £15 billion, getting to the stage of about 19, possibly £20 billion. Now, digital ID is a much more technical and complicated thing to administer and bring forward than the physical version. So do the sums, work out how much this will cost. And I think all of our constituents should be asking every single member of Parliament in this House, should we be spending billions of pounds on a scheme that nobody wants, that there is no demand for, when we have a cost of living crisis raging in every single one of our constituencies? Are we seriously going to spend billions of pounds on a quack-brained scheme that no one wants, which is unpopular and no one seems to need? Then there is what's happening elsewhere, and I know we get the foreign examples to try and suggest that this is just business as normal for this government. I know they're keen to promote the Estonia scheme, and I've had a good look at Estonia. Estonia's 10 times more digitally engaged than the United Kingdom. It's an entirely different nation than we have here. But even with all their knowledge and experience in digital systems, there have been catastrophic data leaks, which has led to real problems and issues for the citizenry. Now look across Europe. Europe is, of course, like Scotland, developing its own type of digital wallet. And of course it's the right thing to do. People actually like having these things on a digital wallet. The key difference, mandatory, compulsory. And we come back to that particular feature again. Now, in Scotland, we are developing the Scot account. It's proven to be very popular, and I encourage people to use it. There is nothing wrong with having things in the digital wallet. It only becomes wrong when it is made to be mandatory, when you're expected to carry one, even though you don't want to give one. I'm not giving away to the honourable gentleman again. That is the issue, and this is the thing that the government seems to be so cloth-eared about. Now, in Scotland, we will have to pass what's called a legislative consent motion to allow this to go through, given our responsibilities for devolved services. We're not going to do it. We're not going to do it. So what the Minister is going to have to decide to do is whether he accepts the democratic will of the Scottish Parliament or whether he's going to do a Tory and impose upon it anyway. And I challenge him to do that in the run-up to the Scottish election, because he will turn this into a nightmare for the government, into a constitutional nightmare for the honourable gentleman. We don't want these things. We think they are thoroughly bad. We saw them off in the 2000s. We will see them off again. The public hate them. The petition, I believe, has now gone over 3 million, Mr Turner. So we are getting there with the general campaign. I pity the Minister for having to take this through. He would have been much better had he had his place back in the Scotland office. We saw off ID cards in 2000, so 20 years on. Whether it's plastic cards or digital apps, this is still a data-grabbing, liberty-eroding, multi-billion-pounds waste of time. We beat them in 2005, and the SNP and our leadership in this campaign, in this Parliament, will ensure that we see them off once again. Thank you very much, Mr Turner.